Welcome to the Chess Channel, the channel where you can learn loads. As you might know, there are two Tatas about. One is played in India and the second in the Netherlands. This year's Tata in India is no different to any other Indian Tata. From the 10 participants, 5 are from India and the others are Mamedyarov, Nakamura, Maksudlu, Wesley So and Abdusattorov. Just like with any other tournament, if you have a bad day, that rain will never stop. Wesley So, for example, is one player who is yet to find his form in Tata. Wesley is the highest ranked player and yet this appears to mean very little. In his game or round 6 against Sarin Nihal, though the odds against Sarin were very much stacked against him, you would think that 100-point gap in their respective rating would do it all. It's never the case in any tournament. Shall we see why? This is the game of round 6 in the Tata Steel Blitz tournament between Nihal and Wesley. Nihal white, set things off with 1. d4. Wesley answered with this knight move, and with Sarin trying this kingside knight development. This is how Wesley moved on. What you see here is the symmetrical variation, which is very much playable, but for how long is the symmetry going to carry on? With Sarin trying this move, Wesley decided for a Tarrasch type of game. This pawn was then removed. And now via this response, Wesley is looking to recover by taking this pawn on c5. This what you see here may be considered as a type of gambit. Do you allocate resources to try and hold on to this pawn, or do you let him go? Sarin tried to hold on to him via this bishop response. Wesley So in turn develops his queenside knight. And with Sarin here trying this type of response, Wesley realizes this pawn on c5 can no longer be taken. In this light, he tried this bishop move to get the king to safety. Sarin is no longer an uprising star. Why not? He is one already. What he did here was to open up the kingside. Wesley without any real delay lashes after this bishop. But with Sarin having the option to preserve him, is this what he does? Yes, he backed the bishop off. As soon as this bishop backed off, Wesley now tries this challenge on c5, and just before Sarin tried anything on this queenside, he first tickled the knight in this way. Knight e5 is quite playable because even if you chase after this knight on c6, if this knight comes off with a check, once he goes, this knight on c6 can now escape into this outpost on e5, and Wesley should be more or less fine. Even if this knight comes under further scrutiny, he can always find this squeeze on c4, or he can back off to g6 where nothing can really threaten him. If we return to the game as it was played, when this knight came under fire, Wesley backed him off to where he stood earlier. Sarin without any real delay, got rid of this pawn. Wesley decided to use his queen to capture, but with Sarin once again creating another attack in this way, Wesley knew his queen had to go somewhere. He retreated her to this square. Nihal could always try something like this thrust on the queenside, but this game was moving faster than we can copy over the actual moves. He developed the knight in a span of just 2 seconds. Wesley in turn wants some resolution on the queenside and he too in just about 5 seconds. This is how he tries to make progress. In this point in time, Sarin had to make a decision. In order not to allow the queenside to break wide open, he amazingly chases after the knight. Given the nature of this game, Sarin was throwing in a full pawn, but what is the catch here? Can you afford to take, and if so, why? The answer is no. If you want to play this one out, we can try this line of play together. Should this pawn come off, don't say you have not been warned. What happens if you chase after this queen in this way? Queen a6 will undoubtedly get you up against this painful situation, and against any move, this knight is going to pay the price. So for this very reason, when the knight came under fire, Wesley backs him off nicely. And with Sarin pushing along with this pawn, not only he saves an otherwise lost pawn, but now he is the one who is calling the most important shots. Knight d7, led to Sarin to get his bishop into the diagonal, and all he wants now is to try and open up the center. This bishop on g2 is so well positioned here, and not only Sarin knows this but Wesley too. This is what you call the bishop from double LEH. We can only say this backwards because if you use this word, this world will get flagged up and the video will be banned on YouTube. From this point on, the next few moves are predictable. Wesley got the king to safety. Nihal copies that. And with Wesley going for a third knight move in as many moves, Sarin tried a rather risky approach forwards. This was the move he went for. But as soon Wesley chased after this rook, Sarin knew very well what he had to do. This rook had to go somewhere, and in the end this is where Sarin placed him. bd7 resulted to the instant attack on the bishop, and it was Wesley's turn to go it defensive. With no way possible to save the bishop unless you move him the heck out of here, Wesley returned him to the 7th. And what follows next is a tactic to mobilize this bishop on the king side. As soon as Sarin jumped the knight into e5, we knew what he wanted to do. Right now, he is probably after the bishop on d7, but this is not a move that worries Wesley. If he wants out, he can always retreat him to the back rank. Now, if you do this, bishop e8 is as bad as things would get. Not only this rook on f8 is locked in, but Sarin is the only one with all of the nice shots. If this bishop retreats to the other side, c6 now becomes available. If you occupy it, yes, bishop d6 is possible, but you need to worry about what is coming. This push to c4 is a tremendously strong initiative, but can you see why? One thing you do not want to do is to take c4 with the pawn, because this bishop on g2 will rule the entire diagonal where the queen and the rook stand. If you go knight d7, how strong would this queen repositioning be? It is safe to say this pawn on a5 is no longer possible to save, and against any move he is going to come down like a fly. Bishop b4 is not going to work either, because if you use the knight to capture him, takes with the queen, and Wesley will never be able to recover. Coming back to the actual game, Wesley never worried about this bishop, and his next move was about to prove why. He got his queen to reposition here. Sarin does go on to pick up this bishop, and with Wesley capturing using the knight, this is how Sarin continues. Rook c8 could have led to this push to c4, but Sarin for some reason holds back. He went for this queen retreat to the second, but maybe time is the reason for this sudden response. Bishop c5 was played here, and this move was forcing in so many ways. As soon as this bishop was eliminated, Wesley was about to capture him, but can we work out the best way to do it? He used the knight, but was this the best way? Though this position looks simple, it is by no means as simple as it looks. This pawn on a4 is a sitting duck, and if Wesley wants, he can have him removed. With no real way to protect him, Sarin does push on with this move to c4, and though it might not have come at the right time, it is still a very valid initiative. Wesley here was about to take no prisoners. He used this knight from c5 to get rid of this pawn. Sarin for some very mysterious reason places his queen into this outpost, and what he allows Wesley to do is to permit him to, or give him the opportunity to, challenge the queen in this way. Should the queens come off, knight b3 is going to lead to this pawn to come off, and there are one of two possible, if more, ways to continue from this point. One is to trade in the rook for the rook, and if you go after the knight, this knight jump into the third looks to be the best possible move. Option 2 would be to leave this rook in and go straight for this pawn on the queen side. Rook back to c5 is most likely to lead to this knight jump into c6, but what if you were to trade the rooks here? This is most likely to lead to a draw, provided each player finds the right moves. If we return to the original game, though queen c5 looks like the right thing to do, Wesley was not willing to throw in the queen. What he did instead was to push on with this pawn. What this move did was to allow Sarin to attack the knight. Wesley had it all worked out here. He knew his knight was thrown into the deep end, but this did not worry him one little bit. In just 1 second, this is how he played it, creating one of the most powerful pins there are. Knight b3 resulted to this knight jump, and Wesley is looking to apply a nice and easy fork on e2. With Sarin having everything under full control, he went on to pick up this pawn. Wesley in turn takes on e2 with a fork, and right after the king found the second, Wesley or his knight goes on to get rid of the rook. As soon as this knight went, Wesley was automatically faced with an uphill struggle. His immediate attention was this knight on b6 that was under danger. With Wesley jumping the knight into this outpost, Sarin finds this outpost, and with these two passed pawns on the queenside, Wesley knew he was not very likely to stop them. He can easily stop one, but to stop them both without handing over material was going to be short of a miracle. What was about to kill him off was this subsequent knight jump into the third. Why was this move so bad, and how was Sarin about to take his big revenge? As soon as Wesley saw this move materialize, he knew he was done. Rook chasing after the queen led to this move. And with Wesley having no choice but to accept, Wesley was about to blow it. This try to go after the knight was Wesley's nemesis, and this is what made him go south very fast. Either knight b3 or knight d7 are playable. If knight b3, rook b5, and knight takes would be strong enough to seal victory. Another way to do this would be to just push on with this pawn, and even if the knight drops, this is what you would need here. This push to c7 would be the icing on the cake. Coming back, Sarin exercised the other option. He jumped the knight to go after this rook on f8, and as soon as Wesley moved this rook out of danger, Sarin still finds the 7th in this way, and this is where everything happened. Wesley saw no point to carry on and simply resigned. Sarin, in fact, in this game, played way stronger than Wesley himself. Wesley went wrong in the opening. He carried on, but with no hope of recovering an early lost pawn, he still found a way to equalize when that pawn was removed on a4. d4 led to a read situation for Wesley because he allowed the knight to come under fire. 2 moves on, another pawn disappeared on the queenside. Wesley had retaliated instantly by taking on e2 and forking the king and rook, but even this was not strong enough to get him back into the game. Those 2 pawns, the 2 passes on the queenside, is what did the job nicely, and as soon as they found their way to the 6th, those flags were hoisted. In addition, when the queens departed, that rook move to chase after the knight is what accelerated the end, and 2 moves after that, even Wesley So stood hopeless. This had been a big blow for Wesley, but to be fair, he was outsmarted in every single way. The only threat Wesley produced was to fork the king and rook, but even this was not good and strong enough to make an impact on Sarin, who played an outstandingly well game. As a result of this outcome, and others of course, Sarin manages to achieve something that he has never been able to do before. Do we know what this was? Sarin Nihal wins his first ever major tournament in India and ends up on top of so many other stronger players. To name but a few, first of all Nakamura, second, Sarin also ends up on top Mamedyarov, he additionally beats Pragna, and most importantly he ends up on top of Gakesh, Adbusatorov and Erigaisi. What is important to note is that Wesley himself had probably suffered the biggest loss from the whole lot. Wesley So, in the portion of events, had only managed a single win, and with 2 wins on his rap sheet, he ends up at the very bottom of the pile and just above Seth Errman. We might have said Wesley was the highest ranked player in Tata. In case we said this, this was a slip. The highest ranked player in Tata was Nakamura, but he too ended in 4th position. The highlight, however, is how Sarin snatches first place and Wesley himself suffers probably the biggest successive defeat. If he knew he was going to lose nearly every single one of his game, would Wesley have participated in this event? And this is what we said earlier. Irrespective of your own rating, chess is such an unpredictable game, without no one knowing the end result. And this was our video today. We sincerely hoped you enjoyed it, and this is irrespective of you being either a fan of Wesley or Sarin's. God bless and hope to see you all soon.